Hello and good day, Prime Minister Trudeau. My name is Jeffrey Ord, and the more I tell you about my life, the more difficult I expect you to find each layer to believe. The RCMP certainly don't. All of the violence, all of the events, the personality shift when I was 7, the travel, the education, the accomplishments, everything that I've put in the first 3 videos for you to review, they are all woven so tightly through my very short life that you can't see the threads anymore, but you can see the patterns. Those patterns are how and why I was employed to investigate physical and sexual predators in the education systems of 18 countries over 25 years. In April of '92, St. Anne's University forced me to go to a doctor. The only doctor I knew was in Liverpool, so I returned to Liverpool to face my 3 childhood rapists without a thought that most people would consider this terrifying. I needed work, so in May of '92 I started a summer job at the centre, what is now called Penny Lane, where I am from. The center provided daycare services for physically and mentally challenged adults in the community. I was 18 and appeared to be a 5'6", 320-pound woman. I worked in the wood shop for the on-site carpenter. I was teased all summer by the staff, as customers and visitors frequently mistook me for a client. Carol, a 50-year-old man with the mental age of a 5-year-old, mistook me for Tippy the Mouse, a character from his favorite storybooks, and I was frequently called Tippy by both staff and clients. Over the summer, the staff recognized that I had a unique way of interacting and speaking with the clients, and that I was frequently called upon to help calm down a particularly agitated client, as I neither used nor was afraid of violence. At the end of the summer, the on-site RN was training a new staff member. When the trainee asked what to do when a client became violent, the RN explained the procedures and lamented that one of the best people to get in these situations was the 18-year-old kid from the wood shop, but he was leaving for college soon. Prime Minister Trudeau, in the summer of '92, my childhood rapists screamed at me all summer long that my siblings would be raped and mutilated like me if I didn't take one of them to my medical appointments, to ensure that I didn't tell the doctors stories like I had when I was a child. After my diagnosis and prescriptions by Grantmeyer in the summer of '92, my childhood rapists screamed at me for the rest of the summer that I had to take one of them to the Ag College for the orientation in either July or August to make sure that I didn't tell the health nurse that would give me my injections stories like I had when I was a child. All summer long I was screamed at that if I told anyone anything I would never be allowed to go to college. I only had 20 years left in my life, and I wanted to go to college. I had to hide a lot from the college, and the students, and the health nurse, and everything got worse the first week at the college. The Ag student body was rougher around the edges than the French liberal arts college I'd gone to the year before. I was instantly hated for being a short, fat woman in male housing. I was constantly assaulted, insulted, and called Pat, a Saturday Night Live reference I don't care to explain. In my first week at the AC, I was penetratively raped by a group of 12 to 15 students during a frosh hazing ritual that went wrong. They stripped my clothes to see if the mutilations upstairs matched the mutilations downstairs. They were so drunk and high and confused and curious by my appearance and everything that was being screamed at me in public that things spun out of control, and they decided to see if the front door matched the back door. I was held down by 2 or 3 people, while others used a beer bottle to poke and prod. My genitals had been mutilated as a child, ligaments and tendons had been torn, and in '92 these rapists discovered that they could push my genitals back into my abdomen, forcing the front door to look like the back door. They took turns laughing and screaming "Pat" at me and shoving the neck of a beer bottle inside me from all directions. Ligaments and tendons and muscles were all torn again, internal organs were severely bruised, and I was bleeding internally. I was black from my knees to my ribs until October. I couldn't hide this from my roommate, and he simply never asked. He was rarely in our room because my untreated medical issues made it unpleasant to be in a small room with me for any length of time. I postponed all of my meetings and appointments with the health nurse and delayed my injections until the bruises healed in late October. I was being assaulted and insulted daily. I was hiding so much from the college that I didn't dare let anyone learn anything, not what had happened before, not what had happened during Frosh Week. In that same time frame, the frost week of '92, the first person came to my room in the middle of the night when my roommate wasn't there. This was the first of many over my 5 years at the AC. They came more often after my roommate dropped out of college at Christmas in '92. They came alone, sometimes only one or two a month, or other times more than one a week. Some came once and never returned, others came a few times until they felt they'd been helped as much as they could be. Some came to see me for as long as they were at the college. Men came to see me, women came to see me, black people, white people. They all came for the same reason. They wanted help, and they were convinced that I was the only one that could help them. In that first year, they all explained that they were as ugly on the inside as I was on the outside. They all explained that life, college, returning to college, or just seeing me and what I was going through in public, something in their life was pushing them to self-harm, drug addictions, depressions, and other issues. Some were just so unhappy they wanted to drop out of college and wanted to know how I was surviving. They all wanted to know the same thing. What had happened to me? What made me look like what I looked like? How did I get help? Because I obviously had. How did I endure what was being done to me in public? Because I never seemed to be fazed by anything. In '92, I had almost no answers, and I didn't give any. I wouldn't have given them if I had had answers. I deflected their questions by asking them about themselves. I deflected their questions by providing the contact details for medical professionals in Bible Hill, Truro, and Halifax that matched what they said was wrong with their lives. Many of these people had had childhood physical and sexual abuse experiences as bad or worse than my own. No one ever admitted to medical issues like mine, and I never explained anything about myself. For that first year at the AC, these visits reinforced the idea that the level of violence in my life was normal and that everyone had to deal with it. April of '93 was the end of my first year at the Agricultural College. A tradition in my residence, which at the time was Chapman House, was a year-end house party, a big gathering at a local bar where 300 or 350 people would celebrate all the adventures from that year at the college. It's very much like what you see in a frat house on a television show or in a movie. The president and vice president of my house, who were officially student union representatives, they would call people up on stage over the course of the evening and they would present them awards to commemorate achievements or to tease and embarrass people. At one point during that night, I was called up on stage and I was presented with an award called Pat, What Is It? And a microphone was shoved in my face in an effort to embarrass me. And this is when my personality and my very wild and dark sense of humor took over. I dropped my pants and I wiped my ass with it. And then I said into the microphone, "Pat that," and I gave it back to them. They were shocked. 300 people exploded in laughter, many of them crying or nearly wetting themselves at what I had done and what I had said. As I was leaving the stage, the dean, the supervisor of my residence, a man named Darren Didichuk, he came up to me and told me that he had watched me over the course of the year and that he was so concerned that I was going to drop out that he had taken my application as an RA, which is a form of security. He had taken my application and thrown it in the garbage because he didn't think I would even finish the year. He was laughing and crying so hard at what I had done on stage that he told me that if I could be that person, then I could have the job as an RA. In the fall of '93, effectively a week after the bar incident, I was one of 6 RAs in Chapman House, a co-ed residence. I was in fact working 4 to 6 jobs, as well as taking 6 to 7 courses per term instead of the required 5. I was learning as much as possible, as fast as possible, and using sleep deprivation to manage physical pain. It's easy to forget how much physical pain I'm in because I never talk about it. The most high-profile and violent event of my 5 years at the AC started the first week of September in 1993. Rumors spread that varsity athletes on multiple teams were pooling money for a contest. They had picked a Chapman resident they hated, and it wasn't me. The goal, the game, the reward, all the beer the money could buy was going to be given to the person who gave the intended victim the second worst beating. It was a strange condition to ensure a violent string of assaults by multiple people over weeks or months. The rumors spread, and everyone began pointing fingers as to whose responsibility it was to report this to the college. The AC had a student judicial system where students could write reports and other students would investigate and decide disciplinary action. It had become a common practice that only RAs or campus security would investigate and write reports. Within Chapman House, the intended victim refused to write a report, fearing an even worse beating from the people that were setting all of this up. The RAs, including myself, waited for the RA whose wing this was happening in to write the report, as that was also a common practice. Campus security began pointing fingers and refusing to investigate or report the rumors because they believed it was an issue for the RAs. Fraser House, the other co-ed residence, and Truman House, the female dormitory, all of their RAs and all of their security were pointing at each other and pointing at Chapman House. Everyone was worried about being beaten if they reported this contest to the college, a contest that amounted to the contracted beating of a student. This went on for weeks. The varsity athletes warned everyone. Writing it up would result in them being beaten worse than the intended victim. I, like everyone else, stood by and did nothing. I had too many of my own secrets to keep. Half the campus, perhaps as many as 1,000 students, knew versions of what was going on. The deadline for the beatings was approaching and nothing was being done. I had managed to make a few friends my first year at the AC. One of them was the RA for the wing where the intended victim lived. He was my friend, and he had had a very rough first year, and I overheard him telling his partner that he couldn't write the report because he couldn't go through what he went through the year before. Weeks went by as I slowly realized that most people are scared of this level of violence. I'd never encountered that before. It took me a long time to realize that these people didn't actually know what to do in the face of this kind of violence. That was also something I had never encountered before. The deadline was approaching and my friend was not doing well. He was scared for his friend, the intended victim. He was scared for himself and for his partner and for his future at the college. I overheard him and his partner one night discussing their plans to drop out of college rather than be caught in or responsible for the beating of their friend. I decided to look into it for them. They didn't know who I was or what I was in this context. They didn't know what I was capable of. And once I had decided to look into this matter, it only took a few minutes. I went to get a coffee from Tim Hortons. On the way home, I planned to stop and visit a few of the people that would visit me in the night, and I would ask them for help, as they felt that I had helped them for years. I would ask them, if they didn't know, to find out who had set up this entire contracted beating. I didn't need to. I learned the names of the two people responsible from the first person I spoke to. I wrote up the report, naming only the intended victim and the two people that had set it up. It was filed with Student Judicial, who immediately panicked as they already knew about it and didn't want to be involved. Student Judicial sent it to Faculty Judicial, and they called immediate emergency meetings. Myself, the intended victim, and the two accused testified in closed private meetings. Faculty Judicial was unhappy with me because I wouldn't name more people, and I wouldn't explain who or how I had learned what I had learned. I stood my ground and explained that everyone was frightened, that they had never encountered this level of violence before. I explained that some people were considering dropping out rather than being caught up in this. I stood by my decision that the intended victim and I were sufficient to testify against the two accused. Faculty Judicial was particularly unhappy that I wouldn't name sports teams or varsity athletes. The two accused were allowed to finish their programs. They were allowed to attend classes. They weren't allowed in residence, and they were warned if anything happened to anyone connected to this event, that they would be expelled and referred to the RCMP. Faculty Judicial briefed the coaches for all of the sports teams, both male and female. Everyone was warned that anyone involved in any form of retaliation for this judicial situation would be expelled and referred to the RCMP. The entire campus instantly knew what I had done and that I had withheld everyone's names. Most people didn't care and forgot about the entire event in a matter of weeks or months. Some people took note that I could be trusted, and while my physical appearance continued to improve with my medical treatments, I continued to receive midnight visitors that wanted help. In my second year, it was because of my reputation after this judicial event. By my third year, my appearance wasn't even mentioned by my midnight visitors. My reputation and those that I had helped in the past continued to bring midnight visitors. A large group of students, especially the athletes that were involved that I didn't name, were murderously angry with me. For weeks after the hearings, and weeks after the decision, and weeks after the warnings, these students would gather in groups across campus and loudly and publicly plan the best way to lure me or drag me off campus and beat me to death, or bad enough that I wouldn't be able to return to college. They publicly announced that the college would be unable to touch them if it happened off campus. My beating, in retaliation for what I had done, was planned publicly and so often with such brazen contempt for the faculty judicial's conditions that it got the attention of the general staff and faculty. The people employed at the college overheard these conversations and became so concerned that I would be injured or killed that for weeks the faculty and staff raised the issue of my impending beating at staff meetings in different departments. They, like me, wouldn't name names. They would only voice their concerns to their supervisors. The heads of 3 departments wrote letters of concern to the dean of students, who was my ultimate boss. I was forced into meeting after meeting where the college pressured me for names while asking me if I wanted the RCMP involved. I refused everything. I considered the matter settled. In hindsight, I understand that the college didn't actually want the RCMP involved either. The head of faculty judicial met with me several times. In our last meeting, I said the one thing that stopped all further meetings. The head of faculty judicial said he was extremely concerned that I didn't understand the level of violence that was being directed at me. I was tired, I was frustrated. This had gone on for months longer than it should have. My personality and my wildly dark sense of humor took over, and I told him quite bluntly, my childhood was more violent than this. My family is more violent than this. I will be fine. I was never called to another meeting on this particular topic. Just as I had learned over the last 2 years, the worst the world can offer is not as violent as my family. I had learned the importance of listening as part of investigating. I had learned the importance of keeping people's secrets. I learned that 2 groups of students intervened to diffuse many of the times that things may have escalated to an attempt on me or my life. My rapists from 1992 diffused all discussions out of self-preservation. It had only been a year, but they were still concerned that if anything happened to me, their names would come up. The people that I helped in the middle of the night diffused any discussions that they were exposed to. My reputation at the college was set in stone, and a large faction of students hated me for the 5 years I was a student there. Nothing that large or high profile happened at the college again, not during my time. I never waited for someone else to handle something. I handled fewer and fewer minor issues as people avoided me because of my reputation. And I handled stranger and stranger situations as they arose, because people brought them to me, knowing that I could be trusted to keep people's names out of reports. This is how I started investigating physical and sexual predators in 1992, and it dominated my life until 2017.